My name is Mika Poutala, and this is Speed Skating Secrets.
I mean, I guess just to be simple about it, it's, you cut back on the volume and you play it safe. This isn't a year where you take huge risks. Because if you take that risk and it doesn't work out, there's not a lot of time to figure it out year 4. And the Olympics are special, so you kind of play it safe as a coach.
So enjoy and learn. Welcome. My guest today is Olympic medalist from Nagano 98. He has skated 2 world records himself. Coach Olympic medalists like Beixing Wang, Sang-wha Lee and Table Mo. And right now he's a head coach for Crockett Rockets. Welcome to the show, Kevin Crockett.
Thanks, Mika. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to interview you today. You have been coaching me last 2-3 years, and I actually found out really interesting stuff about your own skating career mainly, and I want to ask about those. But first, you have been coaching many different nationalities. How did you end up coaching international skaters in the beginning?
Yeah, it's an interesting route, I guess, in my career, how it worked out. I started off with the Olympic Oval program and actually just working a little bit with the national team coaches to fill in a little bit. And then I had an opportunity where the head coach of Canadian speed skating didn't really want to coach Beixing Wang. She requested that and he said no. That was Sean Ireland, and she came into my program at the Olympic Oval, and together we worked together, and it just really seemed to work well, and she really improved at a really quick rate. So China just kept sending skaters. So I ended up with a bunch of lower level Canadian speed skaters and some really high level Chinese skaters, and I was able to get on the World Cup circuit with Chinese speed skaters, and it kind of just flourished from there.
Yeah. So what was the year for that?
That would have been 2004, 2005 season.
And was it one of your first years as a coach?
It was maybe my second year as a coach. That would have been my first year as a World Cup coach.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to your coaching a little bit later, but tell me first, how did you find speed skating?
Speed skating was kind of an alternative for my parents to hockey. My parents didn't have the money to put me into hockey. It's an expensive sport in Canada, and in a kind of a grueling schedule for parents. So my dad's colleague at work just suggested that maybe in the meantime, before hockey, I could learn to skate with speed skating. And I went out and tried it, and I just ended up staying there. I really liked it, and I guess the more I got to learn about hockey, having to share rinks when I was a short tracker, I didn't really like the aggressiveness and the culture. So staying with speed skating was just a really easy decision for me.
Yeah. How old were you when you started speed skating?
I was 7. Yeah, so, and it was terrible for a long time. I was a really bad speed skater. My sister was much better than me.
When you continued skating, you said that you weren't that good, but
yeah.
What point did you feel that could be something?
It's interesting. Having to compete against Quebecers growing up, short track, I felt like I was terrible because they would they were so good. Quebec short track was just so good. Then I tried long track and realized that I was competitive and I could beat the Quebecers. So then I realized that long track was my thing. And I think that would have been maybe at the age of 16, 17. I realized I could actually be pretty good at speed skating because I could beat some Quebecers long track.
Yeah. I want to take one point here that is not actually relevant about your skating maybe, but I read that you, at one point in your life, you changed your last name because of your grandfather.
Yeah.
What did your grandfather mean to you when you were a kid?
He was really important. So my grandfather was legally blind. He was almost totally blind. So he actually lived in our house. We took care of him a little bit. I don't want to make it sound like we took care of him in a way where he couldn't do anything, but we supported him growing up. So it was normal for me just to be around him and to look to him for advice and borrow money off him when my dad and mom wouldn't give me some money and just little things. So he was a really special part of the family. And just a real like pillar of strength in our family. He wasn't a man of many words, just really smart, a lot of wisdom, and I leaned on him, I think, a lot for some lessons in life. He was just a strong, kind man.
Is there any specific things that you learned from him?
I think to be humble, or try to be. I think he was a really old school generation type guy where he was very giving, never swore, which I guess I didn't pick up on that one too well. Very religious, quite quiet. So the little things in life that I think are a little bit more old school were some of the stuff he instilled in me.
Yeah. Did you admire some skaters back then when you kind of began skater, or you were like around 10 years old?
Yeah, back then it's interesting because we've got a guy on our team, Laurent Debroy, Larry. His dad actually was somebody I really admired. Amazing short tracker. His name's Bob or Robert. I think every Canadian kid, at least my age, really looked up to Gaetan Boucher, who was an Olympic, I think 2-time Olympic medalist, maybe 3 Olympic medals. But I really kind of looked up to short trackers when I was growing up. We had an amazing short track team, really dominant Canadian short track team, Guy Dagnon. So I guess I looked up to a lot of Quebec, French short trackers.
Let's go with your career after you entered the World Cup circuit. And there's things that I don't really understand, so I have to ask you things.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You started skating World Cups in March 92, and your first World Cup medal is from February 97. But something interesting happened before that, because you skated the world record on 1,000 meter December 95. So what happened there? You didn't have any medals before that, but you suddenly skated world record.
Yeah, it's I was incredibly inconsistent when I look back in my career. It did take me a long time to I guess to figure long track out at a high level. I was pretty good at it, but I wouldn't say I was elite, really ultra elite. It took a long time for me. I did have a world record on the old skates, the pre-clap skates. But I would say that the clap skates were a thing that really broke some skaters, like the Klevchenyas and the Manabu Horis and these guys that were monsters on the old skates couldn't adapt. For me, the clap skate was a revolution that really helped my career.
Tell me a little bit more detailed, like how did you break the world record? What happened before that? And how come suddenly, if I see the results, it doesn't make sense that you suddenly break world record without any medals?
Yeah, that's actually a really difficult question because I had continuity with my coach, Jack Walters. It's just something clicked. To be honest, one of those things where I remember losing a lot of weight. I got really fit. So maybe I was a guy that was a little bit soft, maybe 12% body fat. And then all of a sudden I made a decision to be 9%. I think that's a big lifestyle change. That's eating better and not drinking as much beer, this type of stuff. I think that was a big turning point. And I think I really started understanding the technical stuff that my coach was telling me and started taking it very personal that I wanted to beat these older guys on the national team. I wanted to be the guy, not just a guy in the group. I wanted to be the best on that team. And there were some Quebecers at that time that were really competitive with me, and it was a rivalry. His name was Sylvain Bouchard. And I took the rivalry more seriously against him than even a lot of internationals. And I think actually he really helped me because it was a healthy rivalry. It wasn't mean. It was really healthy, and we really took it serious. So an example, he broke the world record in 1995, and it was a big point in his life. I broke his world record the next day. So we were doing this type of stuff. He was fourth at the Olympics when I was third, and I think that was 2/100ths of a second that I got a bronze and he got fourth. So we had this rivalry over years. So I'd actually give him some credit for really pushing me to the next level.
Was there some kind of injury before the world record, or did I remember it wrong?
that's not totally accurate. The injury came, I didn't make the 94 Olympics. I should have, but I got into a bad car accident, which was a pretty bad one. And then I pulled my groin really, really bad, and so did Mike Ireland at the Olympic trials in 1998. And I almost couldn't skate and make the 98 Olympics, it's interesting because I consider Mike Ireland to have been a phenomenal speed skater, and he beat up at me a lot of times skating, and he couldn't race the Olympic trials because of the same groin tear. So at that time, I consider acupuncture to have really given me the chance to manage the pain of a groin tear and actually skate the Olympic trials and make it. So yeah, I had some injuries.
Okay, let's continue. Your first World Cup race was 1500 meter. But then you didn't skate any 1500 meters until November 98, at least in World Cups. And again, something interesting happened before that, because you broke a world record again, but this time in 1500 meter, November 97. So, so explain me, like, what's going on here?
So the first race I ever did in the World Cup circuit, 1500 meter, the only reason why that was the race I raced was because we had such a strong sprint team. There's no chance I could have beat the 500 guys and the 1,000 guys at that time. But our 1,500 meter depth in Canada was terrible at that time. So I actually snuck in the back door for 1,500 meter. That World Cup, I think, was in Quebec. It was that was a funny race. I remember it very well. Anyway, skipping forward and getting the next world record, I guess a world record's a world record, but I broke that world record on the same day that Ids Postma did. The difference was I was on this really fast ice in Calgary, and I think Ids was in either Heerenveen or Berlin or something. So I never took myself too seriously in the 1500. I ended up racing it thinking I was pretty good at it in Norway, and I remember Eskil Ervik just destroyed me. Like embarrassing. I had a world record. I went out against this guy. I think he was finishing and I was coming out of the last corner type thing. He beat me so bad. So I never really considered myself to be too much of a force in the 1500 meter. It was I used it as a training race for the 1,000. I got lucky, I guess. And I think that 1500 meter record was at a time where we had transitioned into clap skates. Times were being broken all the time. The real dominant 1500 meter guys were still figuring out the clap skates, and it was a kind of a lucky time for me, just being honest. Like if I would never have broken the 1500 meter world record on the old hardtail skates, no chance. So it was just a transition time that I had figured out the clap skates quite quickly, and I was improving really quick, and it's a little bit lucky because I look at the time now, it's 1:49.0. I mean, that doesn't even get me out of B group now. So I know it's a different time, but I don't think it's a really dominant time when I look at what's happened with Shawnee, and some of the top guys are so fast. So yeah, it's kind of a funny thing to have the world record in it, but I don't think anybody really remembers Kevin at that time, Kevin Overland, as a good 1500 meter skater. It's just kind of a lucky race.
So you have broken 2 world records, and then comes the Olympics in Nagano, and you win a medal for 500 meter.
Yeah.
But then you placed 10th in 1,000 meter and 20th in 1,500 meter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to me understand this. Like you first broke these world records on 1,000 meter and 15, and then suddenly you get a medal for 500 meter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when going into those Olympics, people expecting me to be a guy in the 1,000. I think maybe if the 1,000 had been first, I would have had a good chance at it. But after the 500, after Jeremy and I medaled in the 500, we really got, I think, overwhelmed with the media and really got off our game plan. I made some changes to my skates that I thought was smart, and my skates felt terrible after the changes. So there were some circumstances. I think Jeremy and we talked about it, and just how things changed after we got a medal at the Olympics, and how crazy it got, and how I don't think we were managed very well. I think we made some mistakes, and so I have no excuse for the 1500 meter. That was just a race just to get the Olympic feeling and go out and not do too much. The 1,000 was disappointing for sure. I expected more out of myself, and that was a disappointment. But having won the medal, I mean, I guess that just kind of that was the icing on the cake, and I left that Olympics quite happy. But I always was a little bit disappointed with that 1,000.
Okay, you skated your last World Cup race in Helsinki, January 2001, and retired. So what happened next?
Yeah, I was a little bit lost. I would say I didn't really know exactly what to do with my life. I really kind of was a bum for a little while. I got a job making like $9 an hour working at Canada Olympic Park. I just didn't really have any direction. I didn't know what to do. So, and then retiring that young, you kind of remain on the fence a little bit. You don't know if you should make a comeback because people are telling you should, and I didn't have any direction. So I kind of mulled around a little bit. Ended up coaching my sister a little bit, and my sister Cindy, and she improved quite a bit, and it was noted by the manager at the Oval how quickly my sister improved with some of my tips and some of the help I was giving her. And then eventually he offered me a job, and that was the beginning of my coaching career. But there was a few years there where I was lost.
Okay. Is your approach to speed skating similar to your own coaches?
Yeah, for sure. I think the basis of my program would be, a lot of it was from Jack Walters, who was, my national team coach for 10 years. But then I've had the chance to, I trained in Holland, and that had a big effect on me too. I took a lot away from the Dutch program and kind of included some ideas into my own program. And even recently being in Korea, I learned some things there that I would say I kind of implemented into my program as well. So yeah, it's a combination of some experiences internationally, but I'd say the foundation, a lot of it is Jack Walters inspired.
Can you give some like a detailed things that your coaching philosophy has evolved in these years of coaching, and especially when you learn things from different countries? Yeah.
I think, Jack Walters was a very calculated coach, very scientific. So sequencing and what you do and when you do it is what I learned from Jack. And sometimes it's about training smart. It's not about training the hardest or putting the most in. I think it's about being smart. I got that from Jack. I think the Netherlands was also the same approach, but just they tend to work. I think they tend to work just really hard and almost overdo it. But I saw that end of the spectrum of just working really, really hard volume-wise, even as a sprinter. But when you taper at the right moment, you can get good results. So the Dutch side of it showed me just putting more volume in. The Koreans, I learned what the body can handle. But I also recognized over in Korea at the point the body breaks. And Koreans tend to break a lot of their athletes. So I understood how much the speed skating or the human body can take and what happens when it does break. I recognized it a lot when I got over there. So just the amount of work that the Koreans do, and from the age that they start, the insanity over there with no science. They have no science over there whatsoever. But we both recognize for a lot of years the Korean team might have been the best sprint team for many, many years, being led by Sang-wha Lee. These guys don't take heart rates. They don't take lactates. They don't sit in the lab. They don't self-monitor. They don't get massage too much. They don't do a lot of that stuff. They're like just the non-scientific approach, but they're still getting huge results. So that was something I had to really analyze and try to understand. And it took me a long time to understand it. But with them, it's just super hard work from a young age and willpower.
Is Chinese and Korean mentality about skating similar, or is there differences?
I think there's differences. I think that's a tough one because the Chinese are really hard to understand. As far as their culture goes, it's so different. The Chinese, I guess I would say, I don't feel like they ultimately really know what they're doing. They don't have a system. They'll take anything they see and mimic it. If they get their hands on a Dutch program, I've heard that they would get this 2-week plan from a Dutch coach and they would repeat that for years. The Koreans have a system. They stick to it. They believe in it. and they put their heart and their soul and their blood into that system. Depending on, and that's all the coaches included or buy into the system in Korea. In China, they don't have a systematic approach to their training, so it's kind of like spinning the bingo wheel, you know? It's like, it's really random. Each coach tries different things, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. So the system in China is, once they figure it out, I think they're going to be really dangerous. And then now they've got a Dutch coach over there and a Canadian Chinese coach that's gone back. I think they are going to get dangerous now and get a lot of results. But up till now, I mean, they haven't been a force because their system is non-existent.
So how much do you think that you have to individualize the programs inside a group?
I think it's really important. I think it's important. It's almost like I would describe it as reverse engineering for an athlete. You meaning that you take a look at what they're strong at and what they're not strong at, and you recognize the gaps that they have, and then you try to fill in those gaps. So you have the athlete, and you almost have to kind of like look at it and work backwards, in my mind, and like I like to look at it as reverse engineering. But that's not the same for everybody. So if somebody has a really fast opener and they have no endurance, and then you have the next sprinter that's the opposite, they can't be in the exact same program. So there has to be some individual stuff in there. I think that has to happen. You just can't have one program all the time and just spit it out. There's certain things for certain athletes that have to be different.
So if you could gather like your dream group together, would it be a lot of similar kind of skating, or would you pick like different kind of skating and try to use all the benefits from individual skaters?
I think the strongest groups aren't a bunch of skaters that are identical. I think you don't want a huge difference in your skaters. And I like, for me with a sprint group, I don't really want the long distance guy in there. I like the sprinters, but kind of the way our group is now, like you have a lot of endurance. Like you've got a good 1,000. Willie's really fast in the 500 and got a great opener, and just that diversity, like that. I like that. I like, so you can work off each other's strengths and kind of fill in the gaps and the weaknesses. I like that.
So what do you think about men and women training together? What's the benefits?
I think it's honestly benefits the women a ton. But I don't underestimate. I think the group is with women and men training together. I think there's a balance there that's really quite nice. You know, sometimes the testosterone in the room can be a little much to handle with too many guys. I think the girls can balance that out, and I think there's a lot of benefit there in that. They can soften the tone a little bit. They've got different humor, so I think that they add that. But I think the women, just the way I set my group up, the women chasing the men, and how technically sharp they have to be to keep up, and what they have to do to improve is that's really important for them.
Do you think that every single like woman out there would benefit to skate with the men's?
Yeah, I do think that, but I think what I do think is a lot of times that you have to be careful, because I think women can get discouraged trying to keep up to men. So when I implemented this program, the way I do it with Speed Skating Canada, you know, there's some girls that just couldn't keep up, and then ultimately there was one girl that retired, and I think a lot of that was just because she was frustrated and she couldn't keep up and she couldn't adapt, and that wasn't fun. I think women that accept that challenge and really work at it, and then end up closing that gap and can keep up to the men, I think that's when they make a huge leap. But I think it's a real battle for them to make that leap. And I think a lot of the women struggle with that, and it's not for them. But for the girls in my group, they made that leap, and you can see it in the results now.
We're now living an Olympic year. Do you think that training program should be different on an Olympic year?
Absolutely. I think that's kind of... I think with elite coaches, or most coaches understand what the differences are in a year 4 of a quadrennial. And I mean, I guess just to be simple about it, it's, you know, you cut back on the volume and you play it safe. This isn't a year where you take huge risks, because if you take that risk and it doesn't work out, there's not a lot of time to figure it out. Year 4, and the Olympics are special, so you kind of play it safe as a coach.
So what do you think where you will be in next 10 years?
Next 10 years, the funny thing is with coaching is it's a weird thing with coaching. You never know. The journey that I've been on, I never would have thought that I would have moved to Korea and lived there for 18 months. I never saw that one coming, and that was a great experience for me. Ultimately, I always wanted to work for Canada, and I got that opportunity. So I'm with Canada now. But any coach will tell you in any sport that at any moment they can just let you go. So I would like to think I'd be working with speed skating Canada on some level. And for me, I don't want to go to the office and be an office guy. I always want to be a coach. So I'm hoping that I'm coaching and helping this country, helping Canada get better. And if I can work with internationals to facilitate that process, I'll do that. But I'm hoping to be with Speed Skate Canada for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming about to end now. And are you using social media, or how can people contact you?
I am absolutely not on social media. When we talked about my grandfather earlier and some of that old school stuff, maybe that's something I took from him. I'm not interested in it. I don't tweet. I'm not on Facebook. And I like it that way. I think I'm a family man. I'm really focused on my kid and my wife and making my speed skaters better. And for me, I don't think social media enhances that on any level. So if people want to get a hold of me, it's more like an email address. Probably not my phone number because I don't give it out. But I'm approachable. If you see me, I'll talk to you. But social media is not for me.
Yeah, I kind of knew that. Yeah. So if you want to be in contact with Kevin, you just have to find out his information from Canada's Federation website.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. This was a really, really nice, and I definitely learned something new, and I hope that everybody else is getting something out of this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mika. My pleasure.
So one more thing before you go. Please share it with your friends and leave a review wherever you listen.